Hello, hello. Live stream is back after like 4 weeks or something, or even more. So I'm super excited about today. Bit nervous actually. Hey, can you hear me? Just as a little sound check. Hey ho. Badum badum. Snowflakes. Hi Nico. Yes, you can hear me. Awesome. It's getting exciting. It's going to be a bit personal today, so I'm quite nervous about it, to be honest. Seven people watching at Friday at 6. That's awesome. That's really cool. I needed that extra time to finish something. I'm going to show you in a second. Are you all prepared for the weekend? Oh, I should really grab a beer first before the live stream, but it's too far down to the basement and up again, so I'm saving it for later. Yeah, most definitely. Good reasons to have a beer, yes. Yeah, you can all drink one and then let me know in the comments and make me jealous. That sounds horrible. I have to read EU law. Not a good weekend. I feel terrible for you, Ole. Great. So one more minute and then we can get started. Oh no, everybody's having a cold, reading EU law, writing tests. That sounds terrible. Oh, you're writing tests? Now I got it. I thought like about exams at university. You write Kirby tests, that's good. Hey John. Awesome to see you around. I'm also excited. 6 o'clock, here we go. Finally a new live stream. It has been too long without one. And I want to get started with a little personal background on the last weeks. So the last weeks have been extremely turbulent. I did a workshop which you might have heard about in Berlin, which was pretty awesome, but took a lot of time to prepare. So that a lot of time went into that, actually more time than I anticipated. And then last week was Beyond Tellerrand, which was fantastic, a beautiful conference. You have to go there if you are in Berlin, Düsseldorf or Munich. You have time to, you should really attend it. But then the entire week was gone again. So first workshop, then conference, then recovering from the conference most basically. So another week was gone. And this week has been just a nightmare, to be honest. I'm telling you this because, well, it's the full thing. You get all the details, the personal stuff, and I've been speaking to a couple people about it already. When you start a personal project, you have like this roller coaster ride going on day in and day out. It's basically most of the times, happily with Kirby, it's mostly like the high times where it feels really good and I'm motivated and everything is fun and awesome and I could just go on forever. But then sometimes there are those really deep lows where you fall into a hole and everything feels shitty and overwhelming, and that has been this week actually. So recovering from that, not really actually some reasons. I mean, it's mostly a combination of many things where for the longest time during this journey to Kirby 3, I was just totally excited about it and feeling like energized and feeling like totally under control. And in this last week, it's just, maybe it was the hangover from the conference, I don't really know. It was just that I started losing control over all the different parts and somehow being a bit lost about what the next steps would be. And to be honest, it took me the entire week to get recovered. I always worked on stuff, but not as productive as before, and I'm kind of it's kind of hard to tell you that there's not going to be a new version out today. Yeah, I'm really sorry, and the reason for that is that I only recovered like yesterday with a new idea that I had, and then I started working on that, and this idea brought me back in all the kind of motivation. But then this idea was so big that it took all yesterday and today to build something, and now building this just finished, I guess, like 30 minutes ago, and I just didn't have time to prepare the package to create a final version out of it. So I'm really sorry. I'm going to pick it up on Monday, and I hope I can give you something as soon as possible. But enough talking, I just want to show you a couple things. And you've probably have enough of this kind of view. You've seen it in many live streams, and the dummy data is getting pretty lame. So my friend John, who is hanging out here as well, and who is also doing a fantastic conference called Reasons To in Brighton, and you should really attend it if you got the chance to go there. It's fantastic. It's like a creative conference with crazy talented people talking about design, talking about their work, talking about coding, all kinds of stuff. It's really awesome. I enjoyed it so much in September, and we worked together on his website, and so I asked him if I can get some of his dummy data, or not really dummy data, some of the content that he uses on his website to have a bit more beautiful stuff to show you, and especially because he's a lot of content in there, a bit more things we can play with in this demo. And that's the speakers thing. So it doesn't really fit in the starter kit, that doesn't really matter, so I don't build a full conference site here. It's all about the speakers page, and we are just going there, and here it is. It's loading. Live streaming is blocking it as always, but here we go. So a nice beautiful list of all the speakers that have been speaking at the last conference in Brighton. And the thing I want to show you today is that I always have been very happy about those sections that we have in Kirby 3, like the project list or the page list with the cards. Everything is beautiful so far, but I felt like we are already hitting a certain limit with that in the version that you've seen before, and so I created something new to get even more options with those lists, and I'm going to show you that. So there's nothing wrong about this list in general. It has all the images, it has the names of the speakers, and that's really, really cool. But I'm going to show you how John structures his speakers list. So it's this folder, and what he does is he has a folder for each speaker, and in that folder he has the profile picture for each speaker. But then, because speakers have a lot of work sometimes, he puts them into a subfolder. And that is a really good idea in my opinion, to group those the images a bit more. So for some speakers there might even be additional folders where you can put data into or images into. And I was thinking, like, how would you really work with this if you want to show all this on one page? So let me show you So if I go to a speaker profile and I set this up, how would I combine this? It hasn't been possible before, but it's now possible. So as you can see, I can get the profile pic from this folder, and I can get the work pictures from the subfolders. And that is quite impossible at the moment, or has been impossible with the latest implementation. And that's just one detail of it. And I'm going to show you how that works. So let me load the blueprint of a speaker. And as a first thing, what you can see, the typical stuff that we had before, like the definition for all the fields, nothing new here, just a couple more field implementations. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then we have the section definitions here, like you've seen them before, for the profile picture and also for the files that are in the work folder. But now comes a special thing. So we're going to delete that for a second to not confuse you. So this is just a standard thing where we say, okay, we want to have a list of files. We give it a headline. We say it should just be one file and it should use the layout cards. So very basic. That just means we get for the speaker, we get one file, one image as a card, displayed as a card. That's not too exciting so far. But the more exciting things come here. In the second list, what we can do now is we can navigate to completely different places and pull images or pages from there. And what I did in the last 2 days is to create some kind of language for that, because we are not in PHP, so we don't have the full power of Kirby. If we would be in PHP, it would be super easy. We could just do something like page and then find the work folder and then take the images from there. That would be totally easy, but we don't have that. So I needed a new way of doing the same thing, basically, but within YAML. And in order to do that, I created this new syntax, which is basically just a shortcut version of the same exact methods that you have available in Kirby. So what we can do here is we can go from the same page, so from this speaker page, and then, for example, get all the images of that speaker. That would result in a list of just the same image that you see in the cover, so that is not too useful. But what we can also do is we can go from here on, find the work folder and get the images from the work folder. And then we get, super slow, but we get all the stuff from here. And what you can see here is the syntax that I used is a bit similar to what you know from languages like Handlebar or what is the other one, Twig or something like that. So what it really does is it goes through objects and calls methods on those objects, and you can even send arguments to those methods like this. And this is all Kirby stuff. So what we can also do is say we filter those images by a certain file extension, for example, like extension, and then we would use PNGs only. So that would be totally possible now with this new syntax. So we can go through everything in this. And so the self thing is just a way to start at the current page, because what we can also do is start at a site and then go to projects, for example. Doesn't make too much sense, but then get the first get the children and get the first child and get the images from those from that project. Would also work. And if we reload, it should load all the images from the first project. So you can see you get all the flexibility that you have in templates, but within your panel, within your YAML. And I think that's quite special. And that works for files, that works for pages. I'm going to show you that in a second. And there's even more than that. So we just reverted to what I had before. So we're going to the work folder, fetch all the images from there. And what you can also see right now is that this is combinable with a template language, or with a very simple template language that you can use in order to even control more what is happening with those items in the list. Sorry, I'm a bit confused here at the moment, but I'm going to show you that in a second. So let's focus on that profile pic again. What you can see is in a new version we have the file name, and by default the file size that is being displayed. But we have full control now over what is being displayed as this main information and the secondary information as well. And we can do that by defining what the title should be. So we can have a simple string, something like profile pic, and then if I reload, you can see that it's just a simple string, so we can have a simple string here. And the second one would be some information, so there's an info field for that. If I reload that, you can see that it puts the some information string in here. That's not very useful, so we want to have the same kind of flexibility for those fields. And by using the exact same syntax but within template brackets, we can achieve that. So what I can do now is I can say I start with the file, with that current file that is loading in the card, and say, okay, I do the file name. That's what you've seen before. So if I do that and I wrap it into curly braces, I get, oh no, the YAML is breaking. Sorry, that's kind of a YAML thing. We have to wrap that in quotes. But then you can see the file name is appearing, and of course I can combine that. That's the only reason why it's wrapped in curly braces, is that I want, in some cases, combine that with something. And of course I can do that because it's wrapped in curly braces and it's this template language, and it's doing things within that template language. And it's getting even more exciting, because what I can do is the same kind of way of accessing data. Is like I can say I go from the file back to the page, and then I take the page title. That's most of the times not really useful. Well, in this case it's actually not too bad. So I get from this image back to the page title, and then I can say I combine that with something like this. So I can combine it with the name of the speaker in this case. I wish it would load a bit faster. And of course I can get all the information that I have on file objects. So everything that you know from file objects can be used here as well. So I can say I use nice size. This is the default, where it just shows this readable size. But I can also say give me the dimensions. If I just use the dimensions, I can show a really simple way of how big this image is. I can say I only need the width of the image. I can do that as well. I can even drill down to the EXIF data, I mean, if I wish. That's something that's totally possible. So everything that is available in Kirby is available in that template language again. So we have these two new things, the curly braces if you want to build strings out of it, and the simple syntax if you want to just navigate to somewhere. And by introducing that, making it available everywhere, it gives us so many options to move around the file system in the same way that we've been moving around, but within YAML. And that's, I think it's really powerful and awesome. And I'm giving you more examples about the possibilities here. So that is just one pretty simple way of doing that. What you can also do is, and by the way, of course, this is also very powerful in terms of additional filtering and additional limiting or offsetting or whatever. So the same kind of things that you can do with collections, basically, like with those images, You can do them here as well, and so everything is available here. But let's go back to the speakers page, to the full list, and I'm going to show you a couple more examples how you can leverage this to do really cool things. So this is the blueprint for the speakers list, and as you can see, it's just a list of cards. It pulls in the template of speaker. We can ignore that. And now we can say that we want to control the image for each item. Of course, we have the same things. We can also control the title and the info, just as I did before, and I'm going to do that in a second as well. But I want to start with the image, because in many places, the image that you want to show in the list of items is not necessarily the first one. That has been the implementation so far, so it was just getting the first image. In this case, I wanted to give more flexibility to just show any kind of image that you want to have in that list. Same syntax that you've seen before, so we can start it. We get started with self, which is just a reference to the current page. From there on, we can say, okay, I want the first image. That is the default that has been set up right now. So that would go into each of the speakers folders. Just grab the first image. Very simple. But right now, it might be cool to say, instead of pulling in the speaker profile pic, we want to get one of the beautiful work pictures that they have in their work folder. So very easy. We can start with the current speaker. Again, go to the work page, get the images from there, and then we could just take the first one. So we just take the first image. We could also take a specific image, of course. So if, for example, there would always be a cover image, we can just get that by specifying the file name. Again, in the same way that you would do it in your templates, but just with this new dots syntax. So we have the first image here, and then instead of the profile pics, we have a beautiful list of, it's not working. Why? It's not self, it's page, because self refers to the speaker page, to the full entire speakers page, and not to the item in the list. So self is always the page you are currently on, and then you have like page for each individual item in the list. I'm still figuring out if this is the best way to write it, but for now it seems to work. So what you can see is it works as I said. You get the first image from that list. Looks totally different. Pretty cool. We can even do like really crazy things that we could do in templates as well, and say we go through all the images, we shuffle them, and we take the first one. Then we would even get like some randomness within the panel. That's not necessarily the best idea, but it gives some extra flavor to this kind of idea. Again, live streaming and an old MacBook is not the best combination. But if you can see that, if we go in there again, completely different set of images. Okay, let me react to a couple questions first, and then I'm going to show you a bit more. But if you upload images, will they end up in that path then too? Yeah, that's kind of why I haven't published a new version, because I have an idea how to control what is happening with pages and also what's happening with uploads, and that is not implemented yet. So I need to implement that first, because otherwise using that entire new feature isn't really useful. And Lucas is asking, is it also possible to don't use the curly brackets if I only need the result of the query and I don't want to add a string? Well, in theory that could be possible, but I guess it would just complicate the process of parsing it, so I guess I just don't do it. Yeah, so we got a nice list, shuffling images. I guess you can see where the potential is in that. let's just do a couple more things. So really nice in my opinion is that we with pages, for example, we have the same options that I showed you for files so far, where we can pull in different kinds of information from those pages in order to build the list. So again, we have the title field and we have the info field, and we can completely control that. So I can go use the page and then go from the page and use the, so speakers have a first name field and a last name field. So I'm going to use the first name as the title, and I'm going to use, I'm going to use the last name as the information, which is already kind of nice to give a bit more, yeah, well, and here we go with the malformed YAML again. That's the only downside of the brackets, but once you got used to it, it works fine. I'm also considering, to be honest, to build a blueprint builder for the first time around this, because there is so much opportunity now in all those different features that I think I want to simplify the way of setting this up, whereas you can still go to the blueprints and modify them afterwards, but just as a first initial setup helper with all those different options. But as you can see, the result is really cool. So we now have the first name on the first line, then last name on the second line. We could combine that with anything. So we could say we pull in the Twitter username, which is also stored for some, and then you can see how those strings work. So I can combine that with a @ in front to give this impression that it's the Twitter username. And hey, it's so slow. Time for a new computer. So yeah, we can see that it's pretty awesome. And those who don't have a Twitter username, no, they all have Twitter usernames. No, Julia doesn't. So yeah, you can see it works still well with those who don't have value in there. So it's just creating some white space. Bart has another question. If we add some custom fields to files in a certain blueprint, but store them in a different location that is shared with another blueprint where other fields are defined, what then? Yes. That's also something I have to solve before I share it. There's an idea for that, but I have to play with it first to give it to you. I don't want to spoil that for now, because I'm not 100% sure if it's going to work. I don't know about you, but I often had this situation where clients were asking, we have this list of projects, and so far what we had in Kirby 2 was always the title and then the number, the sorting number. And oftentimes the sorting number wasn't really relevant for clients, because well, it's just a sorting number, right? But clients often asked me and said, we have like project IDs, for example, so internal project IDs for a huge architecture bureau who had like an index of projects and certain unique IDs for each project, and they wanted me to show that project ID in that list. And it has always been a bit tricky to do that, and now it's super easy. Everything that is just stored in the page can be displayed here, and of course it can even be combined. So we could just say, doesn't make too much sense, but let's say we create the full name manually. That would mean page first name, page last name, and then we could combine that with what I don't know, with additional characters to give a bit of a nice little addition to it. So all this is becoming possible, and I'm quite excited about it. I'm going to show you why this is even more exciting, and I'm going to show you that in the users management. But first, let me go to the articles. So in the blog, I have the same articles that you've seen many times before. What you can see here is the new author field that Nico built. It's pretty cool. We still need to work on the image preview, but I really love how intuitive this has become. So you can just browse through all the authors and then select one, and it will be entered, and then you can delete it again. So once I stored something, now I wanted to leave Fabian in there because I want to give you an example how this connection works. So I stored, the author field stores the email address or the ID of the user in the text file. And now if I go to users, you can see a new feature. Well, it's an old feature, but it's newly implemented, and it's even more powerful than before. So we got user blueprints. We can define blueprints for the different roles, for admin roles, for editor roles, any kind of roles that you define. And the blueprints work in the exact same way as you've seen so far. So you can define additional fields, you can and you can even now define content to be dragged onto a user profile. And this is exactly what I did here. And now I broke the filter. Shit, didn't save it. So let me fix that really quickly, because that's exactly what I wanted to avoid. Let me go into the article txt of that article, and instead we put Fabian in here. So you can see that article should now vanish from my list. Exactly. And again, this is where the full power of this comes into play. I'm going to show you that in the blueprint for it. So this is just a field definition for the form, and then here are the articles that have been created by me or by other users. And to do that is really, really simple. So all you have to do is saying, okay, I want to have a new pages section. It has the headline articles, whatever you want. And then I select my pages that should be displayed in that list. So I go to the blog, I take the children, I take the visible children, nice and easy. I could sort them now, I could filter them additionally, it's all possible. And you can see there's even a more advanced way of filtering. So it's totally valid to do this, but with that kind of syntax you get even more control over that, where you can say, let's go to the author field of each article and compare that with the current user. So in this case, self is the current user. I'm taking the ID of the current user, compare that with the author field in an article, and I get instantly a list of filtered articles that have been created by that user. And if I go to Fabian, you can see that Fabian has written that article. And if I click on the article, of course I land back on the article list, on the article form. And I guess again, you can see the potential in this. This could be combined in many ways, even with a kind of a shop kind of situation where you have products and orders and things like that, and then people can fetch the orders in their profile, etc. All this is possible. Can you now show the date of each article underneath? Not in that list. That is something I'm working on. So the list is a bit limited so far, but of course what I can do is I can now convert that to cards. Then I get a nice card display of the same thing. Loading is not perfect yet, I'm still working on it. And now I have the same controls that I had before, and here's where it again gets very cool. So I can say of each page I display the date, and then I can even control the date formatting in here. Let's remember that YAML breaks, and I can do German dates or international dates or whatever, something like that. And then I should end up with a list, yes, where I have the title and the date below it. Very, very simple. And again, I'm working on also making it possible to include that in the list. So in the list, especially if you think about the block list, where it goes above or along the full width of the page, the idea is that you have the title first, and then the secondary field would appear here, and probably it would just be either it would be pulled under for short for narrow lists, or it would be stripped. I'm not entirely decided yet, but this is the idea how it should work. So yeah, I hope you can see where this leads, and I hope you understand that all this is like it has been a bit rushed. It's working perfect, but it's just not ready. So I really thought this morning when I said there's going to be a new version that I'm not promising something that I can't deliver, but then sometimes it is how it is. So this is the current state. We are about 2.5 weeks behind with schedule now, but this has been a massive step forward. So with this new motivation, with this new step, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be that we can pick up more speed again in the next weeks. I can show you the one more thing though, which is those 3 different parts that go into what I just showed you. So the first part is the query, and that query class, there's a query class behind that which is doing all these query things, and you can use that. I don't exactly know, you shouldn't be using that in templates or anything like that. So if you want to do that, it would still be better to switch to something like Twig. But for simple things, this is totally perfect, especially like rendering something from YAML or whatever. So it can be combined in many ways with your own projects later, or with your own plugins, for example. So your own plugins could use the same kind of queries. So there's a query class, you just feed it kind of the entry points. So as soon as you give it a page, for example, a page object, you can then start using the page as an entry point. So this is basically how it works. So those are the queries. And then as a second component, there's this little template engine around those queries. I called it Tempura, which is a bit weird, but forgive me about it. So it's basically really just wrapping that in curly braces. That's the idea behind it. We get the syntax. It's using the query class in the background, passing the curly braces, so you can combine that. Same way of initializing it. So you give it kind of the objects that you want to make accessible, and then you can just walk through it. And as a third component, there is a new there are new section classes, and those new section classes are responsible in the background to give you nice data for what you feed it. So this is basically just a PHP representation of what is happening in the YAML files, and you just feed all this different options, and then you get the result back that is then being used to render the result lists in the panel. So all those classes can of course also be used outside of the panel whenever you need them, and they are pretty powerful already. They can also be extended later, so that's the idea, that you can define your own sections with shortcuts, for example. That is something I mentioned earlier, where it would be kind of cool to reduce the kind of the code that is necessary to create a cover section, for example. So this is becoming more possible now with those classes. And that's it. So I really want to release a new version next week, and I'm doing everything that I can to do that, so you can play with it. Yeah, I hope you like it as much as I like it, especially with kind of the options that you have for your clients around that. That's always the most important part about it. Thinking in terms of what is giving your clients or your project in general a better user experience. And so I think that's always kind of where those ideas come from, to make it easier to combine all this and give you exactly the kind of result that you want. Very much looking forward to any kind of feedback. Yes. Thank you very much for watching. 18 people at Friday night or Friday afternoon. That's really, really, really cool. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend and see you next week. Bye bye.